Hey, this is Neka, and today I'm going to show you how I was able to use a little bit of foam, electronics and 3D printing to build my own version of the shield of Doom the Dark Ages. Let's leave this somewhere else. I have been playing Doom since it first came out. ¿En qué año salió el primer juego de Doom? Yeah, since it came out in one of those old white boxy computers, because I'm older than I look. But when I saw the trailer of Doom the Dark Ages, I thought what everybody thought. I need that shield, I needed to build you. So this is how I made it. See, every time I make a project, I start by getting the size right. So I took the measurements of the only other shield I have made, since I didn't find any official size. And with those measurements, now I can go to designing. This is one of the first steps and the one that takes the longest to make, because this is where I make sure everything aligns. The more time I spend in the design, the less time I'm going to spend in fixing errors of assembly or performance. After the design ready, I was able to move to 3D printing. And right from the get-go, for some reason, the ventilator of my 3D printer started failing, so I needed some soldering to do. But a bit later, everything was running again. And with that done, I was able to move to painting. But as many of you know, you don't just apply paint directly. There is sanding, then priming, then a bit more sanding to do. And after that, we can start with the colors. First, I added metallic paint to everything, since most of the build is gray and a little bit of gold here and there. So that was very straightforward. Because they were too shiny, I also added a coat of stainless steel paint to give the gray pieces this gunmetal look. At the end, I apply satin finish because I think it's a good balance between glossy and matte. I know I haven't made the big center green piece yet, but be patient, I will get to that in a moment. And this is where we start putting the frame together. All of these pieces make up the main structure of the whole shield, so I decided to join them with screws to make sure everything is going to stay in place. However, here came a lesson I learned with gap shield. See, the further away the shield is from the handhold, the harder it is to keep it straight. It's just physics, so for this one I decided to place the handhold as close as possible to the center of mass, which helped a lot with balance. Now for the forearm, I just applied cable sleeves and used contact cement to keep it in place. I also went ahead and assembled the rest of the frame. Only problem was I don't really like the yellow of the contact cement, so I painted some pieces in black to cover it up. Now the next part is the surrounding edges you can see from the front, which only a few of them were joined with screws to the frame, while for the other ones a little bit of glue did the trick. But before I moved to the mechanism, I needed to remove the ring I just made, to add black dots on the surroundings, and also these red pieces where the light is going to pass through. But I cannot add the ring back yet, for two simple reasons. The first one is to add these ball bearings on the surrounding of the shield, because at this point it was easier this way. And reason number two, well, because it was time to work on the biggest part of this project, which is the actual front of the shield. For this step I chose foam. It can cover bigger areas, it is light, and it's also very easy to bend. There's a reason it's one of cosplayers' best friends. As you might imagine, the next step is to make this kind of dome shape. And I couldn't find big squares of foam, so I had to join two rectangles with contact cement. After that, I was able to cut a circle, then a slice, and use my heat gun to soften the foam and give it shape by using the structure of the frame I just made. A bit of contact cement closed the gap, and I had a pretty cool dome-shaped foam. At this point, I was about to paint it because I wanted to see how cool it would look. But before that, there was another step. See, from the front view, it's easy to see there are lights all around the shield, and that means cables, so I needed to add holes in the foam. So I marked the areas where a hole was needed, used an X-Acto knife to cut them, and that finally got me to painting the foam. The main and pretty much the only difference between how you paint PLA and foam is how you prime the surface. In this case, you need something like plastic dip. So after priming the foam, I moved on to apply green metallic paint and the big mark in the center with this kind of dark red. And of course satin finish as well. And here came the part which I was the most excited about. Of course, mechanics and electronics. I wanted to do two things besides glowing, so three. Of course, the main feature of the dome shield is the spikes, which deploy, spin, undeploy, deploy back. You know what I mean, they hide. So deploy, spin, stop spinning, and then hide. So this is the protocol with all of the electronics ready, all powered with an 11.1 battery, where our inputs are touch sensor and a micro switch. And the outputs are the LEDs, a gear motor that runs when the micro switch is pressed, and 4 servo motors that work with the touch sensor. Lights are not going to change color, so I only use white LEDs with a red cover which is thinner in the shape of a line, so we can give this accurate lighting. And of course the on and off switch, because I hate when things turn on when you plug them and only turn off when you unplug them. It just doesn't, yeah, on and off switch. Anyways, a bit of soldering and we have the electronics ready. The only extra thing I added are these kind of mini assemblies, where the servos push up and down these small pieces that have ball bearings in them, which are for the rotation of the second ring. I haven't explained that part yet, but it will make sense. The converters and the perf boards are going to be placed in this plastic base, which eventually is going to be glued to the frame, while I also added these small bases for the LEDs and a gear and a base for the motor. Now let's go back to the frame because this is where all the movement is going to happen. How? Well, this is where JLC 3DP comes in. See, all of the claws are going to deploy and spin thanks to a 2-ring system, where the first ring is the most important one. So in order to have a very strong material that is also light, I went to their site and had the first ring printed in 9600 resin. And how did they come out? Well, let me show you. There are 10 of these in total, which will be glued together. And because they're going to be moving all of the time and I don't really need them for aesthetics, I requested sanding as a surface finish. However, they can also be spray painted in many different colors, with either matte or glossy finish. For the purposes of this project, white is just fine. Although now that I think about it, I'm kind of curious of how the rest of the colors will come out. In any case, I will leave a link in the description so you can check them out yourself. By the way, they just released 2 new metal 3D printing technologies. BJ316L, which is a different version of stainless steel 3D printing, and titanium, which is very strong and lightweight. If you do use them, let me know how it goes. I am honestly curious. Can't wait to try them out. Now, by this point, we have the front of the shield, the edge, and the frame. So we can start putting them together. For this, I needed to sandwich the foam between the frame and the edges. They already held it pretty good, but as an extra caution, I added super glue on the edges. And with this big part ready, I was able to move on and glue the electronics and the rest of the mechanics. First, glue the electronics in place. This includes not only the base of everything, but also the LEDs, the gear motor, touch sensor, and micro switch. The original plan was to put the micro switch and the sensor in a position where I can reach both of them with my thumb. Second, assemble the ring number 1. This is the one that is going to be in charge of the spin. That meant glue them together first, and then add them to the rest of the assembly. The gear motor is able to make it spin thanks to these gears added on the design. And that takes us to the opening and closing of the claws. Claws, spikes, saw, whatever you want to name it, it's awesome. But it was also the biggest challenge. See, I needed a mechanism that allows me to perform the deployment without getting in the way of the rotation. So adding servos in the base of each claw is, first of all, is a waste of electronics, and second, all of the cables are going to just get entangled. So basically any electronics added directly to this ring are going to create even more problems. So this is where I built the second ring, with different characteristics compared to the first one. It is joined by screws instead of glue. Plus it has this kind of spike that enters in the first ring. This is so it rotates at the same speed, and this is the one that the 4 assemblies with the servos are going to hold. This way it rotates at the same speed as the first ring, but still can be pushed in and out by the servos without moving the first one. But how does that affect anything? Well, after the claws are placed in the first ring, which by the way they can also rotate, we can move to the secret that makes all of this work. See this 3-part assembly? Well, it connects ring number 2 to the claws that are positioned in ring number 1, and they are connected at an angle. So when the second ring moves, so do the claws, which is a simple but very effective way to achieve that motion. All I did after that was add the rest of the links, glue a couple of mini circuits I completely forgot about, and it was done. Mechanics and electronics work great together. Lights at the front makes the shield look incredible. And the fact that all the inner workings are on display really makes me happy. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments and subscribe for more projects like this. See you in the next one.